We're down in Mila this morning, near Falmouth in deepest, darkest Cornwall, to visit Rustler Yachts. Now I know what you're thinking, Rustler Yachts, famous for their sailing platforms. Well yes they are, but after many years in development they also now have a powerboat in their fleet. It's called the Rustler 41, and it's what Tony Castro tells us is a boat you could be genuinely proud to own. Now clearly the first thing we've got to do before we actually jump on board this boat is to take a moment to think about how it looks, because there's certainly an element of the classical about it in that kind of swept reverse transom and those lovely teak capping rails on both sides. Let's make our way round to the starboard side to get a better impression of her and just take a walk forward here. They really are very nicely put together. If we get a little closer with the camera, all done in-house of course. Rustler has its own specialist departments for pretty much everything, including joinery, and it really is very nicely put together. And you'll see quality like this all over this boat. Excellent stainless steel work too. Classy cleats with nice little bars to protect the gel coat from your lines. And as we make our way forward, you'll see that the beam feels largely untapered for a good distance. That's very useful for the accommodation, and that is of course a consequence of the nature of the hull that they've chosen to use for this boat. There was obviously discussion as a relatively classical builder about making their first powerboat a semi-displacement one, but in conversation with Tony Castro they decided it would be a lot better if they could have a beamier boat like this, and the beam actually encompasses about a third of the overall length, which is pretty significant, because the fact of the matter is that once you're underway with a planing boat, which is what this new Rustler 41 is, you lift that forward hull section out of the water anyway. So beyond about 15 knots, that potentially hard ride dissipates, because rather than ploughing through the seas, it's lifted up and allowed to skim over the top. But it's certainly a very attractive looking boat in a kind of classical way, and it's certainly a very distinctive one too. But if we make our way back to the aft end and begin there, we'll step on board at the aft platform. And as we do so, you'll notice you've got a telescopic ladder that comes out of the central section there. And we've got a very interesting cockpit arrangement too. If we just peek inside there, you'll see it's a really generous size. And in spite of the fact we've got some infill cushions obscuring the starboard side deck there, it's actually symmetrical. It uses a central wheelhouse with decks of equal breadth on both sides, because as Adrian Jones, the director at Rustler Yachts, rightly points out, you as the owner are likely to be the same size whichever side deck you choose to use. And you really can't argue with that logic. But before we get into the cockpit itself via this central transom walkway, let's just have a look at these storage compartments on either side. Now again, as you can see, they're pretty much symmetrical and they're also properly lined. I've run my fingers in these storage spaces quite extensively, and there are no stray shards of fiberglass to cut into my hands and cause me a problem. And what I really like here, well, you can't quite see it because it's full of gear. This is actually Will Brocklebank's boat. He's one of the guys who documents his boating experiences for the R-Boat section of Motorboat and Yachting magazine. So this is his boat, boat number 2. And this is all his gear. But as you'll see, this is a modular setup here. This seating unit is entirely hollow, so that storage goes all the way through there. And that's great. But volume is of no use if you lack an access point of sufficient breadth to fit bulky gear inside, and that's exactly what we have here, courtesy of a good strong ram and what I'm told are some spectacularly expensive hinges. They certainly haven't skimped with those. Now let's close that back up and take it as read that the starboard one is much the same. But what we'll do is just close that up as well. That's better. As you can see, we've got our shore power running out of there as well. Now let's just swing open that aft gate, swing it aside and move up a small step into the cockpit itself. And once we're here, well, as I say, It's quite a beamy boat, and in spite of the fact that we've got good side decks on both sides, there's still plenty left over for the cockpit deck, and I really like the way that's used. Now, as you can see, we've got a good extension to that roof line, well beyond the structure to give you proper shelter in here. And on the port side, just inside the mouldings for that, we've got this seat, which would be brilliantly sheltered, even underway at 30 knots. If I just perch myself in there and put my feet up, that really is a lovely place to sit. And because we have the central walkway there in that transom, and split furniture facing forward on both sides, it feels really sociable too. You really do feel like you're an active element of the party out here on the external deck. Now, as I say, these seating modules on both sides, they are rammed full of storage capacity, and if we look to the starboard side, we've got a little extension to the internal galley, single level deck, and this certainly helps with that. You can close this up and slide the door across for some climate controlled luxury in the saloon itself, but it's handy, you could just lift that right up, and it's the same level through that threshold as is the deck, as I say, so you feel like you're part of that internal saloon when you're out here in the cockpit. And what we have here, and this is personal preference from the owner, is a little ice bucket for your champagne. And down here, if I open this up, apparently on boat number 1 this was a wine rack, but Will has specified one of these excellent Scanstruck compressors, so you can inflate your supboard or tender very quickly without knackering yourself out. And just as importantly, you can deflate them without having to roll all over them like a crazy person trying to get the last vestiges of air out, just so you can stow them away. Now, the woodwork here is very attractive. Again, this is teak. They use that for the most part in all the external trim just to make it weather resistant. We also have a natural teak grate down there, but the decking is an artificial version, and that extends all the way forward along these side decks, up these steps, all the way to the bow. It's nicely done, and it is of course much lower maintenance than the real stuff. As standard, we also have a couple of side gates for easy access to the pontoon, and down here beneath this deck in the engine bay, well, on this particular boat and on boat number 1, we got a pair of Yanmar 8LV 370s. Now, that's the most powerful version of that 4.5 litre V8 block, so relatively lightweight, but they positioned them a really good way forward, operating through straight shafts in the traditional fashion. Works really well. And we've also got a pair of 600 litre tanks, one on either side. A decent way forward again, running fore and aft. Excellent for weight distribution, plus a fuel polishing system here to make sure you feed those engines good clean fuel. And we also have a generator further aft beneath this section of deck. But you'll notice that the electrics, for the most part, are conspicuous by their absence, and that's because we've got a dedicated engineering department that's accessed through the aft bulkhead of the starboard heads compartment beneath this section of the saloon. And we'll have a look at that in a bit. It's a particularly pleasing section of the boat, I have to say. But that, of course, is part of the reason why there's such a significant amount of space down in the engine bay itself. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, ease of access is pretty good too, because we've got a dedicated step to ease your passage down to that checker plate in the centre there. But let's make our way round to the port side and head up a couple of steps forward. Generous width of side deck, I have to say, so it's very comfortable. And as we do so, again, the calibre of fit out becomes very clear. Even the cleats, very attractive, low profile units. But it's interesting when we get up to the bow itself that we have a pair of cleats on either side. Very useful indeed. This boat takes really good care of you in terms of the seamanship practicalities. There's not much to look at as things stand up here on the foredeck. As you can see, we do have a couple of backrests that will lift up into place just to give you a better angle when you're using this as a sunbed. But this is particularly pleasing. 3 hatches right here in the raised island sunbed to admit loads of natural light down into that forward cabin, and we'll see what that's all about later. As I've already mentioned, we've got a good bit of beam forward in this hull, So we should have decent breadth down in that forward cabin as well. And the fact that this island sunbed is significantly raised, as you can see, should make a decent bit of difference too. What else is raised here, as you would expect, is the steelwork. Good rails all the way round, halfway up your thigh. And the anchor, again, as you would expect, is mounted right up there on the stem, so we don't spoil those classical lines. Now, if we open up the chain locker itself, this is pretty well arranged too, and there's plenty of space down there for your ankle chain, plus a handy little hook for your lines, potentially for some slimline fenders too. But let's close that up now and head back down the port side to avoid those infill cushions on the starboard side. As we do so, it's worth noticing this is something that Tony Castro absolutely insisted upon, a nice big curved one-piece screen. No mullions to get in your way. Ought to do really good things for visibility, and it certainly does good things for the aesthetic as well. Spotlights there, and a good size of sunroof as well to bathe that saloon in light, and that's exactly where we'll go right now. Just go back into the cockpit and spin around and face forward.
And there it is. In terms of layout, it doesn't deviate substantially from anything you'll see on most cruisers at around the 40-foot mark. You have the galley, as I say, on the starboard side, a little L shape, good height, so good volume in the cabinetry down below. It comes with an induction hob, plus an oven and a fridge down there, a good size of sink, and I quite like this. This is borrowed from its sailboat heritage, a drop-in fridge freezer. I say fridge freezer because you can set it to be extra cold to operate as a freezer, or just leave it in fridge mode. And this is custom built by the guys at their factory in Falmouth, so it fits the space perfectly. Ahead of that, of course, we've got the helm seat, and the helm station itself has that lovely screen we talked about. The visibility really is very good indeed. Nice big sunroof above us, a skipper's side door there, which is very handy indeed, and we also get a port side window, which is great if you need to communicate with people when you come alongside. Loads of light in here, and what I really like, actually, again, it's the joinery, the quality of this. There's light oak everywhere in here. Again, that was Will's choice. They would tend to use walnut, which is equally beautiful, but this is just a little bit paler and arguably a touch more modern. And opposite that, on the port side, well, again, relatively standard in terms of the layouts you'll tend to see in the sector, a raised port dinette. And that, of course, is raised so that it can generate extra volume down below in the guest cabin. And to help with that, of course, we've got a little hatch there, a little opening window, just to give some extra light, an extra view down below, make it feel a lot less shut in. It's a nice touch. The upholstery was all Will's choice as well. It's a semi-custom company, Rustler, so they can factor in all sorts of things. We also have a nice little wine rack under there. Apparently, Will has very expensive tasting wine. Should invite me on board someday. And in the deck there, we've got access to the forward part of the engine room. But let's make our way further forward. We'll ignore the helm for now because we're going to take him out for a drive in a minute. And we'll head down the steps. As you can see, just ahead of that chart table, we've got another little skylight just to take advantage of the light from that screen and introduce a bit more to the changing area of that port guest cabby. I'll pop down here. I've closed all three doors, and that makes it feel kind of shut off, which misrepresents the boat, because actually, in terms of its flow of light and its flow of traffic, this is a really sophisticated feeling boat. There's the heads on the starboard side. Take a look at that in a second. As you'd expect, the owner's cabin in the bow and the guest cabin underneath that saloon deck right there. We'll pop into the guest cabin first and save the owner's cabin for last, I think. Now, as we come in here, more lovely woodwork, again in oak. Some good hanging storage here at the entry point, really good hanging storage actually, with automatic lights and a shelf up top. And I like these, just little ventilation slots, just machined in. And not straight and linear, just a little bit playful, a little bit more stylish. It's quite a charming thing. And again, you'll see elements like that all over this boat. There's our changing zone here. And you might tend to expect, actually, a cushion there so you can take a seat while you're changing. And the reason they haven't done that is because if we look in here, we've got a couple of single beds, essentially, running transverse. But this forward bed slides this way to this point. So you can have two singles if you prefer. Rigged as a double at the moment. But it makes sense then that they'd leave this cushion free just to enable that to slide unimpeded. We've got power points here, USB points. And actually, to give you a better sense of it, I'll plonk myself into this space right now, hold the camera a little more distant and perch myself up at the head end. Now I'm a 6-footer, or 5'11 3/4, but I like to round up. And as you can see, I've got a good space above my head. It's not a pinch point at all. Lots of light from this window, lots of space from my feet down at the foot end there. More light from that window we mentioned earlier, plus the skylight up on the dash top. And the general quality, the calibre of the fit out just makes it feel that bit more pleasant as well. It's certainly not a guest cabin where you're feeling the slightest bit short-changed. If I just point the camera towards my feet, you'll see that there's essentially what amounts to a single bed running under there where your feet go. And beneath there we've got a trio of big heavy Master Volt batteries running 4.5 just to keep the weight where it's supposed to be. If you need access to them, well, you get that directly there. But let's move across now to the heads compartment. It was on a 41-foot boat. It's feasible, you would think, to have maybe 3 cabins or 2 heads, but here we got 2 cabins and 1 heads because they want to do each of those elements of the boat properly, and they really have done. Now look here, first thing I like is the fact that as I enter this room, it's no problem at all. If you're 6'2", 6'3", you can still walk straight in without stooping. And the heads compartment itself, where we got a nice little curve here in the bulkhead forward. Rustler was certainly not afraid of curves, either in its mouldings or in terms of its furniture. It was happy to work that little bit harder just to make it a pleasant place to be. If I take a seat on that toilet, I've got to say I find that my right shoulder rubs against that curved bulkhead. But if I stand up, you'll see that shifting it outboard a couple of inches is not a problem. We've certainly got a margin to do that, so I would request that if it were down to me. A good size of cabinet outboard with a glass sink, some more storage there, and a decent size of window, and a separate shower aft with a proper seat down there so you can just relax into it at the start of the day. Twin shower heads as well. But this is quite exciting. Adrian said to me, what we've done here is traded the 3rd cabin for happiness, and if you're an engineer, this is certainly going to deliver it. Let's just turn on the light just round the corner here. Where is it? There it is. Now check this out. The lady responsible for the electrics on board this boat is Ruth. I met her in the factory this morning. A lovely lady and a very skilled one. Just look at this. Everything properly routed, everything properly labelled, everything taken out of the heat and humidity of the engine room and popped in this dedicated compartment with active extraction to make sure that it's in tip-top condition and easy to access whenever you need it. Absolutely love that. And yes, some people will say, well, I still prefer a 3rd cabin. Well, that's as may be, but this is not necessarily the kind of client that Rustler's after. They've got an idea of what they want to do with this boat, and they're doing it, and I've got all kinds of respect for that. Really nice feature, that, like it a lot. But arguably, on this lower deck, the best feature is this bow cabin. Now, as I say, good breadth because of that beam forward hull, good elevation because of that island sunbed up on the bow, and spectacular light because of these triple hatches in the deck head. Look at that. Decent hull windows as well, and a central 4.5 bed with outstanding headroom at the head end for you to sit up in bed. It's a really attractive environment, this. I like it a lot. And here's the curves I've been talking about. We look at this starboard locker. Close that door over. Well, you've got one in the bulkhead. That's actually the curve in the bulkhead we saw in the heads compartment on the starboard side. But if you open this up, open one door, you'll see the hanging storage. But this, the curved door also opens to give you proper access. It's just beautifully done, and it's beautifully thoughtful, and I very much appreciate that. Now if we look over on the port side, again, we got some good storage in here. Hanging storage again. More of this oak. And of course we use some oak face ply for the panels, but these corner units are all solid, which is really good to see. More of this ventilation, just to keep everything good and fresh if you leave the boat for a longer spell unattended. No telly in here. I'm sure they could do one if you insisted upon it, but realistically, how many of you watch the telly in bed when you go boating on a cruise? Not many, I would think. And down below, under the bed itself, well, this has been used as well. If I just pop the camera low, hopefully you can get a sense of that curve. 4 drawers. It looks good, and it's practical too, so there's nothing not to like about that. We got space here at this bench for 2 people, that's no problem at all. We got this bolster here as standard as well, plus a foot brace down below, so you can really get yourself comfortable here. The wheel, incidentally, is beautiful. That was sourced apparently directly by Will from Italy. It's got that kind of fibrous leather feeling to the grip, to the touch points. It's a beautiful thing. It's got a kind of classical vibe of sailing yacht about it, which goes really nicely with this boat as well. We got the tabs control on the left hand side, and actually we've got the proportional bound stern thrusters ahead of the throttles on the right hand side, which is interesting. Again, that's a choice of Will, the owner. I like the fact that we've got a really, again, very fibrous kind of fabric on the dash top that really kills the glare. But on that note, I want to just say that it stops short of the screen. And if I move forward to the screen, you'll see just below this lower oak rim, we've got an angled section, so that when you've got the sun overhead, there's a fairly significant amount of glare hits that and comes back and just transmits to your eyeballs. So that kind of blinds you a little bit underway. So it'd be good to see this fibrous fabric extended right the way to the screen, just to improve that element of things. But it is a very comfy spot. Visibility is very good indeed, and that's in spite of the fact that we got this lovely big thick oak mullion to the right hand side. We got the skipper's side door as well, which is great because we got a cleat directly there and tying off points as well, plus that nice broad starboard side deck. Safe to say the ergonomics feel very good indeed. So we'll get her underway. I've got her on single lever. I've actually turned the tabs off because I want to illustrate the fact that this actually, in spite of the fact we got 20 knot winds running, the windage is very manageable indeed. And interestingly, before we get up on the plane, it's worth mentioning that the directional stability is very sound as well. If I just straighten up that wheel and get her running, what are we doing? 5 knots. And there's no need for correction at all. As I say, in the design stages, that was a thing Tony Castro was talking about. If you can have nice solid directional stability in displacement mode, then why wouldn't you go for a planing hole? Because of course when you get up onto the plane, you're skimming across the surface, you can make good distance relatively efficiently. Let's spin her around and head with the seas a little bit, see how she does. As I say, we've got twin Yanmar 370s back there, straight shafts. And as we push through 16, 17 knots, straight onto the plane with very little in the way of bow lift. And that's without the tabs on auto. Now, of course, if you have them on auto, they'll dip the tabs a little bit and they'll just flatten you off a bit more. But the transition to the plane is really not so much a transition at all. And yeah, you feel the revs free up and you feel the pace increase and the efficiency increase, but you don't find yourself digging a hole and then ascending your own hump and dropping back down again. It's much more fluid than that. And actually, if I just reduce the pace a little bit, as we do so, you'll see I haven't touched the tabs yet. No need to, even though we got those 20 knot winds on the starboard beam. Well, we're planing even at 15, 16 knots. And as I say, you could work those tabs a bit harder to plane slightly slower than that. But in terms of efficiency, what we're seeing here is that everything between 12 and about 24 knots. We're running about 3.6, 3.7 litres per nautical mile. As I say, we got 1,200 litres of fuel capacity, so saving 20% in reserve, that's 960 litres. And that translates into a usable range around about 270 miles. through a nice broad cruising band, so that's really user friendly. We'll push on now, get up towards the top end. We'll just tweak those tabs a touch, just to drop that port side a little. We're running into a good head seat now, and we can put on some really decent pace, in spite of the fact that they're getting up a little bit and we got a few white horses around. Feels very solid but not overly heavy, so we're getting decent grunt, decent pickup from those engines. As I say, the water's flung a decent way away from the hull from that bow flare, keeps the aft end pretty dry, and of course you've always got that tucked away seat on the port side if you fancy being outside and being sheltered by the superstructure. What I also like here though is the handling. If I throw her into a bit of a turn, throw her to starboard first, there's a good bit of hill there, a nice bit of grip. We're turning in maybe 4 boat lengths, but it remains nice and soft and relatively quiet. It feels like a very well insulated boat. And we're over on the starboard side, so that element of visibility is very good. But if we turn to port instead, usually you'd anticipate the visibility disappearing on the port side, but because those side windows are so lofty, I don't actually have to dip down to see the traffic on the port side. And in spite of the fact that this sunroof has no glass panels in it, I really don't need them, because visibility, as I say, is perfectly good. In any case, this is not my boat, as I say. This belongs to somebody else, and the fuel belongs to somebody else too, so I should probably just cut this short and head back to Myla. As I do so, I've got to say, this boat is a bit of a treat. It combines that classical aesthetic and that very attractive artisan fit out with a hull that really behaves well, gives you just enough sporting fun that you can feel engaged, not just by the destination, by the loveliness of the environment, but also by the fun you can have en route. Well, we're back in Myla now, having thoroughly enjoyed our day. I've enjoyed my time in the factory. I've certainly enjoyed my time out on the water. And to be honest, I've really enjoyed the company of the people from the factory as well. So look, right from the outset, we've said this is unlikely to be everyone's cup of tea. There's a 41-foot cruiser with a couple of cabins and a single heads compartment. It's never likely to be. But if you're in the market for a 2-cabin shaft-driven 41-foot cruiser that feels that bit more special, that feels quite bespoke, that feels distinctive, different to anything else out there, then this charming new Rustler 41 has to be on your shortlist. Now, whether you agree with that or not, we'd love to hear from you, so please do leave your comments in the section below. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, then please do subscribe to the Motorboat and Yachting channel.